would have been cleaned up and all that lot, and how if we ever did break through the roadblock, what we should do. Anyway, I was quite friendly with Campbell, and when I acquired this armoured car and the Bren gun carriers, I was put in charge after B Company had cleaned the Japs out of a village called Bobo, and D Company had been in there first and the Japs drove them out, but B Company went in under Captain Norman Roth, a private school headmaster from Tasmania, and the father of his son, who became headmaster here of Scotch College in Adelaide. Anyway, we ferried the 40th Battalion and the fixed defence troops, and the fort had been blown to bits by then. We ferried them into the boat over one night. We took first in A Company, there was Captain Johnson, and he wanted to go further. And I was told by Leggett not to allow them to go any further than the end of the boat. Had we gone on, we would have found there were no Japs there anyway, because the crowd had come around from the south. The next morning we'd have got through this, what became the roadblock over the Amabi River. So we've shuttled all night, taking first one company, then the other, until the whole lot were in Bobo. We were scheduled to cross the start line at 8 a.m. the next morning, and I, in the armoured car and the two Bren gun carriers, left the start line at 8 a.m. If you read Leggett's official history, you'll see where he says that B Company led across the start line. They never did anything of the sort. We were I expect a mile, and it was the wet season. It was terrible. This winding road. We were about a mile ahead of B Company, and we came to this roadblock where the Japanese had come around. And I was asked when I clumsily we got the armoured, those terrible armoured cars. We were lucky enough to get it turned around. Got back to the colonel, and he asked me how many troops were there, and I said I thought about 300.
Japs?
Japanese, yeah. Running all over the place, and they'd had a trumpery roadblock. Roth was there, and I remember this distinctly. I said about 300, and Roth said, throw in the battalion. And if we'd thrown in the battalion, we could have gone straight through them. But we mucked around. That was probably about 8:30 on the morning of the 22nd. We never put the whole battalion and everyone in until about 5:30 that evening, by which time we just dithered. And furthermore, the Japs were round behind us. It comes through Kupang, and they're in behind us. In fact, by the time we moved, and our armoured car was then put at the back of the convoy, the armoured car was red hot with the Jap bullets. And instead of going like hell and getting to Jamplong, we stopped at a place called Aircon. And it was the next morning, on the 23rd, that we could hear tanks coming. And again, official accounts talk about 400 yards. Now, in a place like Timor, you don't get roads 400. It's all over the place. Most of it was 150, 200 yards. Anyway, this tank was coming up the road, and it was sufficient to see that they were Japanese. And you see you can tell from the visage what they were. And this fellow's waving what I think was probably a handkerchief. Different people say waving a white flag, but it wasn't a white flag. I mean, it certainly wasn't a fried egg Japanese flag. And I was the closest person to him. And our engineers manned this armoured car. We'd somehow or other, one of them, Corporal Robson, had got an anti-tank gun. And he probably pinched it off John Carrick, I think. But anyway, he had this anti-tank gun that was on the ground. Now, different accounts especially by a fellow called Holloway, who claims to have done all, Sergeant Holloway, claims to have done all these things. He said that they were firing at the Japanese. Now, Peter, if there'd been any firing, we'd have been annihilated, because during the night we could hear the Japan, and they're funny. They're talking to each other all the time. They have to be close. You know, they have to be close to each other. They talk, and we could tell they were all around us. Anyway, this Japanese officer in the in the tank, and others followed him. He was saying, and I can remember these words verbatim: "Gentlemen's please, no shoots." That's exactly. I can see him saying it. I can hear him saying it. "Gentlemen's please, no shoots." And as I say, I was the closest person.
And how close was this? How many metres were you from?
Oh, about 10, 15.
Yes,
it was really close.
Yes.
Came right up.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had an interpreter. Now when Roth captured Babot, when Trevena captured Babot first, they got maps, and they were all Japanese. Now Terry East, who was as deaf as a post, how the hell he was in the army, I don't know, deaf as a post. He could speak Japanese, but he couldn't read it. So we had no idea what these maps were saying. Anyway, I sent Donna up to get the colonel, and the Colonel Leggett came back, and according to the 2IC, Campbell, and I don't recall hearing this, but Campbell said that this Japanese said good morning. And he, Ron Campbell, is said to have said back good morning. I've got no recollection of it, and I was right there. Anyway, East came up and Leggett sent him to speak to the Japanese. Terry East came back, and I heard this myself. He said they want to surrender. I mean, war is incredible. And a few of us said, surely that's not right. They want us to surrender. So he was sent back, and he came back and said to Leggett, they want us to surrender. And Leggett said, I will never surrender. I mean, we were surrounded by it. And we'd been 4 days with, we were short of food and water, and God, terrible. And furthermore, people, because we stopped on the road, most of our people went to sleep. If we'd moved, we could have kept awake. It's ludicrous. So I'm one of those, and the SIG officer was the foremost one, I think, who said to Leggett, "Don't you think we should consult the troops?" Well, he was so taken aback that we did consult the troops, and everyone said that there's just no point in it. We were surrounded, and anyway, so we surrendered at 9 o'clock. We were then bombed twice. And I was round a palm with one of our corporals, Chandler, the boy who was filling the magazines and did not get any recognition. And there was one of my corporals next to me, and the 2 2nd 40th soldiers there. And you get very, very skilled at recognising where bombs are going to land. When you see these things flying over, you can, after we've been bombed so many times, you can estimate where the bombs are going. Anyway, they spread them across the whole length. We were probably about half a mile long, I think. And the boy next to me, the corporal, got killed stone dead. He got a steel sliver that went straight absolutely in the front of his forehead. I reckon I was blown up a couple of feet off the ground, but didn't get hurt. I did get hurt in the armoured car. I got a war wound that you can hardly see.